One Sunday afternoon, I was driving through the farmlands in my area. I was on a back road, and I crossed over a kind of a bridge crossing with a muddy area down below, kind of a grassy area. And there was a sign next to it. Something seemed odd about it. I couldn't tell what at the time. So I went up a little ways, I made a U-turn, and I came back and pulled up to it. And sure enough, here on this sign indicating this area below was the name, the Revlon Slough. Revlon and Slough, two words I would never imagined to see side by side. You know, it was like a juxtaposition of beauty and ugliness, right? Perfume and stench, lipstick and mud. They just did not go together. So I went on with my drive that day, but I couldn't get those two words out of my mind. So it took a few weeks of scratching out notes and thinking about it and thinking about the poem that started to come out, but also asking myself, what was the big deal? I mean, a couple of words that named a muddy rut running through some farmland in the middle of Southern California, you know, what's the big deal? Eventually I figured out that it was a couple of things. Number one, I'm a word guy. Words matter to me. The way they're written, the way they're heard, the way people interpret them is a big deal for me. So these two words just didn't seem right, and that was bothersome. But also, I realized that I had been thinking about this Revlon Slough idea as two different things, beauty and ugliness, when maybe it was a single thing defined by two different perspectives. Revlon suggested images of beauty, and I realized that so did Slough, albeit from a different point of view. Mud and silt are in their own way just as beautiful as red pouty lips and lovely lashes, right? So I had my answer. And after giving it some more thought, I realized that depending on the reader's perspective, many of the poems in this new book I was putting together had that same kind of dichotomy. And that made it a logical choice for the title of the book as well. So that's how the book came to be titled The Revlon Slough. And that should have been the end of the story. But a few weeks later, I drove out past that same sign and I got a surprise, a kind of a whopper of a surprise. When I'd first seen the words, they'd been smeared with mud and graffiti and whatnot. As it turns out, the name was not the Revlon Slough, as I had thought, but the Revlon Slough. I had missed the initial O in the word and spent weeks working on a poem and a book title and all this based on a mistaken identity. So that prompted some searches and telephone calls and emails and whatnot, which eventually led me to the local library and a talented young researcher who dug up the origin of the name for me. The Revlon Slough had been named after a French woman and her two sons who had lived in and farmed the area many years earlier. But this raised another question. Was my original premise for the poem still valid? And the title of a book? Well, I gave it some more thought, and I came to the conclusion that a lot of the work I do and the essence of the way I try to express myself has that dichotomy, that beauty, ugliness dichotomy. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that's neat, depending on the reader. So I would leave it as the title with a note of correction in the book, which I did do in the introduction.